Hey guys, Tony here. Well, the time is finally here for my in-depth guide on the Retribution Paladin here in Legion, patch 7.1. Let's get started. So, first off, the Retribution Paladin is a melee class which focuses on building a resource called Holy Power to then spend that Holy Power to deal further damage. This resource was added in the Cataclysm expansion and has stuck with the Retribution Paladin ever since. Most of our abilities will generate Holy Power, spend Holy Power, or buff Holy Power. Now that we understand Holy Power, let's discuss our core abilities before we jump into discussing talents. Our bread and butter spell is Crusader Strike. Crusader Strike is a single target, quick strike that deals physical damage, which generates 1 Holy Power. With certain talents, the ability can have 2 charges, both on a 4.5 second recharge based on haste. You should use this talent on cooldown as it is your main ability. Blade of Justice is another spell that is crucial to the Retribution Paladin gameplay. This ability strikes the target for physical damage and generates 2 Holy Power. It is on a 10.5 second cooldown, so it should be used wisely as to not waste it. Like most Paladin attacks, this ability's cooldown is reduced with haste. Templar's Verdict is our single target Holy Power spender. This ability is different than the other two in that it does holy damage. It costs 3 Holy Power out of a possible 5 Holy Power the Paladin can have stored. Now, Judgment. If you've played a Paladin before Legion, I'm doing this guide as if you haven't, however. You'll know that Judgment was changed significantly in Legion. Before, Judgment was just another damaging spell that was used on cooldown. Now, in Legion, it has an interesting twist. Whenever you judge a target, it will debuff them, allowing your Holy Power spenders, such as Templar's Verdict, to do increased damage for 8 seconds. So, during this time, you want to be generating and spending as much Holy Power as possible. I'll discuss how to do that more in depth a little bit later. However, Judgment is crucial to Paladin DPS. Those are our core abilities as a Retribution Paladin for single target. It's a simple toolkit, but has a good flow to it for effective DPS while keeping the player interested. Stats are very important to the Retribution Paladin, as with any other class. An effective combination makes us very effective damage dealers in a raid, dungeon, or battleground. Let's look a little bit deeper. First, our stat priority. Keep this list in the back of your mind while gearing up, as a new piece of gear that is higher item level might not be the best choice for you. The list is as follows: Strength, Haste until around 23%, Critical Strike, Mastery. Strength is our main stat as it provides more attack power, which simply increases the damage of our abilities. Nearly every piece of gear you equip should have Strength. Haste is a very important stat to the Retribution Paladin. Haste increases our attack speed, lowers the global cooldown of our abilities, and lowers the actual cooldown of most of our abilities. While leveling or while you're freshly level 110, you'll notice you have low haste. This makes the class feel very slow and uninteresting. Increasing your haste to around 23% should be a top priority, as it will directly increase your DPS, but also make the class more enjoyable to play. Critical Strike increases our chance to deal critical strikes. Crits make our abilities do 2 times more damage, so the more you can do this, the better. And finally, Mastery. Retribution Paladin's Mastery, Divine Judgment, increases the damage Judgment does and also increases the amount of damage per our Holy Power spenders deal while the target is judged. An even mix of stats is preferable, however, still remember the priority. Now that we've covered our stat priority, let's cover our talents. The first tier of talents, unlocked at level 15, have a simple winner when it comes to dealing damage and playing more effectively. Final Verdict increases the damage done by Templar's Verdict by 20% and Divine Storm by 10%. A simple passive damage increase is always preferred. The other 2 talents in the tier, Execution Sentence and Consecration, are too lackluster and situational to make them considerations. The second tier of talents, unlocked at level 30, all have different use cases. The Fires of Justice is the best single target talent to take. It reduces the cooldown of Crusader Strike by 1 second, and gives a 15% chance to reduce the cost of your next Holy Power spender by 1 Holy Power. Zeal will replace Crusader Strike. It functions similarly to Crusader Strike, as it does physical damage and generates 1 Holy Power. However, with Zeal, your attack will chain to nearby enemies. Each attack, up to a maximum of 3, will deal 40% less damage each Zeal. Zeal is only recommended while facing up to 3 or more enemies, so its use case is pretty limited. Greater Judgment will cause Judgment to hit 2 additional enemies, and will always deal a critical strike on enemies above 50% health. This is useful with constant adds spawning in a raid environment, as it ties in well to your other area of effect abilities. However, again, its use case is pretty limited. The third tier of talents, unlocked at level 45, are up to the player to decide. They all have specific use cases, which will determine on the situation. Fires of Justice cause your Holy Power spenders to reduce the cooldown on Hammer of Justice. Repentance is a 1.5 second casted ability that incapacitates the enemy for up to 60 seconds, with its duration reduced in PvP. Blinding Light is an area of effect blind, causing all enemies within 10 yards to become disoriented for 6 seconds, while any damage that is not holy will break the effect. I generally will run Fires of Justice most of the time, as I prefer to have my Hammer of Justice cooldown reduced fairly quickly. However, any talent choice will be fine depending on the situation. The fourth tier of talents unlocked at level 60 are, like most talents, situational. Virtue's Blade simply allows your Blade of Justice critical strikes to now deal 3 times more damage. Blade of Wrath was changed in patch 7.1 to now give your auto attacks a chance to reset the cooldown on Blade of Justice. And Divine Hammer, which is an area of effect ability which generates 2 Holy Power on a 12-second cooldown. Both Blade of Wrath and Virtue's Blade are relatively equal in terms of single target damage. However, Blade of Wrath generates more Holy Power, which allows for more Holy Power spenders to be cast, like Divine Storm for heavy AoE portions of encounters. The fifth tier of talents, unlocked at level 75, are all worth taking. Justicar's Vengeance is a 5 Holy Power spender that deals damage to your enemy, but also heals you for the damage taken. If your target is stunned, the damage and healing amounts are doubled. Eye for an Eye is a 10-second long cast which reduces the damage you take by 35% and counterattacks any enemy that hits you during that time. Word of Glory is a 3 Holy Power spending ability with 2 charges, which will heal you and up to 5 players within 15 yards. All have a use, so again, take which one suits the situation. The sixth tier of talents, unlocked at level 90, present 2 talents that will again depend on your playstyle. Divine Intervention will reduce the cooldown of your Divine Shield by 50%, down to 2.5 minutes, and will automatically trigger if you take fatal damage. Cavalier was an answer to the Paladins during the pre-patch, asking for more mobility. Cavalier increases the amount of charges of Divine Steed to 2 charges. Cavalier can be handy if you need more mobility, and Divine Intervention will save you more times than you'd like to admit. Seal of Light increases your movement speed by 20% per Holy Power spent for 20 seconds. This movement speed is welcome, however you're losing out on damage and abilities by using it, so it is not recommended. The 7th and final tier of talents, unlocked at level 100, seem to be confusing players the most. Divine Purpose will cause your Holy Power spending abilities to have a 20% chance to make your next Holy Power spending ability free. Crusade is where things get interesting. It replaces Avenging Wrath and increases your damage and haste by 3.5% for 20 seconds, and stacking an additional 3.5% per Holy Power spent up to 15 stacks. Holy Wrath deals damage to 4 enemies within 10 yards, up to 200% of your missing health, and 35% in PvP. The main confusion is coming between the choice of Divine Purpose and Crusade. A 20% chance to have a free Holy Power spender is a nice thought, however RNG plays heavily into that. Crusade is a straight DPS increase. and with appropriate gearing, it's not uncommon to be at or over 150% haste during a Bloodlust or Heroism, which makes the spec super fun for those 20 seconds. Holy Wrath is great in PvP, however it's been nerfed once already from 50% of missing health down to 35%, so it seems like it might be a problem child for Blizzard concerning the damage it deals in PvP. Like most classes, Blizzard has designed most of the talent choices across the tiers to be pretty situational. However, in some tiers, there are clear winners. The situational talents are up to the player to decide, although if one is looking for a top DPS talent choice, at least Final Verdict, the Fires of Justice, Blade of Wrath, and Crusade should be taken. So you're on your way to level 110, and you have your Ashbringer. Where should you spend your artifact power? Well, there are many different opinions out there. However, one agreement amongst Retribution Paladins is Ashes to Ashes should be the first gold trait you unlock. The additional damage Wake of Ashes will do, as well as the additional 5 holy power it generates, is the key to the Retribution Paladin rotation. After that, it's generally recommended to work your way towards Echo of the High Lord. Divine Tempest is a nice boost to our AoE potential, but single target is our strength, so we'll focus on that during our upgrades to Ashbringer. So, we've discussed stats, talents, and our artifact weapon. The main portion we need to talk about is rotation and playing the Retribution Paladin. Our rotation is simple and short, and there's not much variation to it. The rotation focuses around dealing as much damage as we can with Templar's Verdict while they are debuffed by Judgment. The main rotation is as follows: Crusader Strike and Blade of Justice to generate holy power, Judgment. During the debuff window of Judgment, use Templar's Verdict. After you've spent your holy power on Templar's Verdict, you must build up more holy power as the Judgment debuff timer is expiring. Use Crusader Strike and Blade of Justice during this time, focusing on not overcapping your holy power. If you have Wake of Ashes available, this is the time to use it. Now that we know our basic rotation, let's talk about our opening rotation, as the fight first begins. This is a time you'll more than likely be under Heroism or Bloodlust, so this is where the Paladin is really fun to play. Start the pull by using Blade of Justice, followed by a Crusader Strike. You're now at 3 holy power, so use Avenging Wrath or Crusade and cast Judgment. Follow that up with a Templar's Verdict. Now you have 0 holy power. What do? Wake of Ashes generates 5 holy power. Use it. Now, at 5 holy power, use Templar's Verdict, then Crusader Strike, and another Templar's Verdict. That's our opening rotation, and at that point, after your initial burst, you need to keep generating holy power like normal and spending it. In terms of big cooldowns, we really only have one, and that's Avenging Wrath. Some might consider Wake of Ashes to be a big cooldown, however its effects aren't noticeable compared to Avenging Wrath. Before we jump into our conclusion, let's discuss Greater Blessing of Might. Greater Blessing of Might gives whoever has the buff a 10% chance to deal 30% extra damage as holy damage. This damage is added to the Retribution Paladin's DPS. So having all 3 blessings, Might, Kings, and Wisdom, is a straight DPS loss. You want 3 Greater Blessings of Might out on your top 3 DPS in the group. All that extra damage is being given to you. The Retribution Paladin is a simple to play class with moderate to high DPS. With small amounts of practice, one can learn to play the Retribution Paladin to its full potential, while also having fun with it. Some things about the Paladin some might not like are the lack of a fun gameplay while below a certain haste level or our simple rotation. However, there are many other factors to the Retribution Paladin that make it fun to play.